Good evening, Alec.
Eric, evening. How are you?
Well, I couldn't be happier to be here.
Likewise. We're back again.
Yes, let's do it.
Who do you have presenting on your end, Eric? You
Well,
and Ken
so Steve Lynch is going to start from Sand Hill. So if we can promote him when he comes on, that'd be great.
will do.
Then he'll introduce me for a couple minutes, and then Ken will run through the design plan, and Rachana is going to manage our slides.
Love it. All right. I've
So
got Rachana and Ken already
yeah,
over on our side.
yeah, I see them. So she can you can share screen with her whenever it's the appropriate time.
Yeah, let me see if you could share screen with me, Eric.
Oh, is that the plan? Okay.
Well, let's just see if I can.
Yeah,
Yeah.
test it out.
Okay. Look at that. Are you seeing that?
No, not yet.
No, then
I don't
hang
see
on 1 second.
I don't see anything.
Okay, then give me 1 second here. Sorry. Okay, you should now.
Yes.
There we
Okay.
go. We see it.
Good.
Yep.
So maybe we'll just start with this up right now. Is that, or are you going to present something,
Oh,
Alec?
yeah. I have
They-
like 4 slides to run through quick.
Gotcha.
Ken,
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna do a quick intro.
Oh, okay. Then you
And
can
then
take me. I'll stop sharing.
You got it. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
there you go.
Yep. So as soon as it's time to turn it over to our team, then Ken can share the exhibit, and then Steve Lynch will go, I'll go, and then Ken will go.
Very cool. Okay.
Yeah, Eric,
Sounds
what
like a
I'll do
plan.
is I'll share that one site plan sheet with
Yeah.
you with the numbers, so you can, when you go through those, Eric.
I didn't know I'm doing that.
Well,
What am I doing?
You were going to go through the square footages, the unit count, all of that. It was in your presentation, right?
I don't recall that.
Okay, then I'll take it, no problem.
Um,
It's that
Yeah.
sheet that talks how we meet
Right.
the signature project
Okay.
requirement. all that
Yes.
good stuff. Yeah,
Yes. So yeah, go ahead and put that up, and I will.
when you speak, right?
I will cover that.
That's what I thought. Okay, sorry I wasn't clear.
It's okay.
Hey everyone, thanks for joining. This is Alec Atienza with planning. I'm just gonna give it a few more minutes, let some people trickle in. Hey Eric, did you get an inkling from the vice mayor if she was coming? Oh, just kidding. She joined right now. If you can hear me. Evening, Vice Mayor. How are you? Good to see you.
Sorry about that. I was on mute.
Oh, no worries. If you're okay, we're just gonna wait a couple more minutes. I want some more people to trickle in. Maybe
Yeah,
we'll
yeah.
start around 6:05 if that's okay with you.
No problem. That should be fine. Thank you.
Right on. Thank you. For folks that just joined, we're gonna get started at 6:05. Thanks for your patience. Okay. 6:05. Evening, everybody. My name is Alec Atienza, and I'm the planning project manager on the city's development review team with the planning division. So before we get started, I just want to introduce a few folks. First off, we have Vice Mayor Rosemary Kamei. Vice Mayor, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Thank you, Alex. Rosemary Kamei, Vice Mayor and District 1 City Council member, and been very involved in the community. And I look forward to hearing what our community has to say about the changes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vice Mayor. So alongside the Vice Mayor, we have some other staff here with us. So we have Jose Oropeza in Public Works. You see him on the screen there. David Keon, Environmental Planning. And we have Laura Miners in Planning. And then we also have Renzel Balance on Public Works Traffic Team here. So if you have any questions for us, we're here on the city side. And lastly, we have the applicant team. I'll let them introduce themselves, but speakers tonight are Steve Lynch, Eric Schoenauer, and Ken Rodriguez. So just going to go over the agenda briefly. So I'm going to quickly provide an overview of the project itself, as well as a summary of the planning process. And then I'm going to kick it off to the applicant to actually provide a project or a review of the project itself. So those few that I mentioned before, they'll be providing details on this proposed amendment. And then we want the bulk of the time to be reserved for open forum. So if anybody has any questions or comments, that's the time to make your questions or comments then. And then lastly, we're going to adjourn. We'll try to keep everybody's time. So 7 o'clock, we'll try to adjourn then. If there are a lot of comments, we'll limit time to 2 minutes. But I'm hoping we won't have to. I think we'll have enough time for everybody to ask any questions or comments. So next, I just want to go through a little of the background. So I'm sure many of you are familiar with this project, but some of you may not be. So I think it's good to provide a little bit of a refresher of what's already occurred on this site, what's been approved, and what's the proposed changes. So in June of last year, so June 2022, this site, which is both the existing El Paseo shopping center at 1312 El Paseo de Saratoga, and 5 parcels on the north side of Saratoga Avenue at 1777 Saratoga Ave. So this site was rezoned from CP and CG, those are your typical commercial zoning districts, to a planned development zoning district. And what that is basically a custom zoning district. And that was done through what's called the signature project process. And what that essentially requires is to allow residential development in an unapproved urban village, which this site is in. You have to provide a significant amount of commercial square footage. And so that project proposed demolishing approximately 126,000 square feet, so a portion of the El Paseo shopping center, as well as some of the buildings on the north side of Saratoga Avenue, the removal of 121 trees, and the construction of 4 mixed-use buildings. So that's what you see here, buildings 1, 2, 3, and the 4th on the north side of Saratoga Avenue. That would have included 994 residential units, about 160,000 square feet of commercial space, a 1.1 acre publicly accessible park, about 2,000 parking spaces, and off-sale alcohol for a Whole Foods, which is located in Building 3. So Building 3 is actually the purpose of tonight's meeting. So to bring it into current day, the applicant in February of 2023, so February of this year, proposed a plan development permit amendment. So that would reduce the height of Building 3. Again, Building 3 is here. It's the northernmost building on the El Paseo side. So they proposed reducing Building 3 from 11 stories to 1 story. They would remove residential uses in Building 3 and construct an approximately 58,000 square foot commercial only building. In doing so, they would also reconfigure the underground parking garage that was previously approved for the site. And then subsequently, the plan is for the applicant to come in for redesigns of buildings 1, 2, and 4. That would be done separately through a subsequent plan development permit amendment or amendments if necessary. So in terms of the project review process, so planning, like I said, received this application on in February of 2023. We're currently in the third round of review of this application. And when we look at these projects, like I said, we're looking at planning review, public works review, fire department, building, Department of Transportation. We all take a look at these projects and review for consistency with the requirements. Specifically for this project, we're looking for consistency with that plan development zoning that I mentioned earlier that was approved back in June of 2022. Additionally, this project also requires environmental review under CEQA. So some of you may be familiar with the previous project that included an environmental impact report for the entire project. For this amendment, the expectation is that it will require an addendum to that previously approved environmental impact report. And that addendum will analyze any proposed changes to the project, any potential increased impacts that were not previously disclosed in the EIR. So upon complete review of both the project and the environmental review, the addendum, this project will be heard at a planning director's hearing. I put a little star here because I want people to understand this is sort of the process that will occur for each subsequent plan development permit amendment, potentially each building. So each time the applicant may propose a change to a building, it will, come through the plan development permit amendment process. We'll have an environmental clearance process, and then it will go to a director's hearing. One thing to note, so we will accept public comments at any time during the project review process, as well as during the hearing itself. So if anybody has any questions or comments and you want to ask or comment outside of this, I will provide my contact information at the end of this, the end of these slides. So with that, I'll stop talking and I'll let the applicant present the project itself. So Eric, take it away. Or actually, excuse me, Steve, take it away. Should be able to share.
Yes, thank you, Alec. Yes, as Alex said, my name is Steve Lynch. I'm with Sand Hill Property Company. And as Alec had mentioned, this project was approved August of last year. Just a brief update since that time. We have started the design development phase of the project, which means we're moving into building permits. But unfortunately, as everyone knows, we're chasing a little bit of a fast-moving economy here, which has made it pretty challenging to design to. So as Alex said, we're beginning to sort of right-size the project program, trying to make sure we have a project that works for now and in the future. And certainly the first step, we're obviously looking at the Whole Foods building. This is the starting point of our project, as we have said sort of all along. And this redesign is what has brought us to our modified application that's under review with staff right now. Together with me tonight is Eric Schoenauer, who will discuss the modification process in more detail, as well as Ken Rodriguez, who is our architect and master planner, and Ken will walk us through the design. So with that, I'll turn it over to Eric.
Thank you, Steve.
Yeah.
In a moment, Ken's going to host some exhibits for everybody. And I am a land use consultant that has been working with Sand Hill and El Paseo in this project from the beginning. The important thing that we wanted to emphasize, again, that has already been said, is that the only thing under review by the city and the only thing being discussed tonight is the design and the uses in Building 3. Building 3 is what you see on the screen here, and it is currently proposed to be only a Whole Foods grocery store, as well as a few retail shop spaces adjacent to Whole Foods. That's the only topic tonight. However, it's important to emphasize that the overall project is not changing, and the overall project will meet the requirements of the approved zoning by the city council last year. And maybe, Ken, it's possible to enlarge the chart in the top right corner and maybe bring it center to the screen. And so the approved project by the city council requires that we achieve a minimum of 55 residential units to the acre. which calculates to be a minimum of 583 units. So our project will continue to achieve that minimum requirement for residential development. The approval requires a minimum commercial square footage of approximately 162,000 square feet. And our overall project will continue to meet that square footage. And finally, the other key component of a signature project in the city's general plan is the publicly accessible park and open space. And the revised plan will achieve the same amount of park space as approved in the original plan. It may even exceed the original size of the park and open space. So the overall project has not changed. This is an urban mixed-use development with a strong focus on community gathering space on the shopping and dining Main Street, as well as the public park and Paseos. And that's still the approved plan. That's not being considered for change. The only change being considered at this time is the design and use of Building 3. So I'll be available at the end of the discussion for any questions related to land use, general plan, and the overall conformance of the project to those adopted city policies. So now I'll turn it over to Ken, the lead architect on the project, to review the design details.
Yeah, thank you, Eric. Just before we leave this slide, we're talking about Building 3. It's approximately 58,735 gross square feet, of which most of that space is dedicated to Whole Foods. I'll get into that detail in a second. It now would have 0 residential units, and it would be 1 story and a height, which is approximately 32 feet. Going back to this slide, as Eric said, everything that previously was approved in our project, the Main Street connection, parking in front of the Whole Foods, access points are all still the same. Going to an enlarged plan of that area, you can see the Whole Foods projects in blue, right in the center of the screen here. And then we have some commercial retail shops / restaurants located in the back. Main Street would be a continuation of the existing main circulation in El Paseo that would continue around, hook up to a new entry point to a lower garage parking that would be placed below this building and would support the Whole Foods parking, as well as the new restaurant retail shop space. Access to that would be off of Saratoga Avenue, both at the stoplight and this driveway connection here. The building, basically, now that it's 1 story, continues to have the same entry point here, which is the main entry for Whole Foods, and their secondary entrance would be located here. You can see Main Street beyond the REI, and we've included just some very simple massing of what buildings 1 and 2 might look like, and would come in under a separate application so that you can review and see that in comparison to the Whole Foods. This is a close-up of it, and it shows the building materials as redwood siding, aluminum canopy, large glass entry features, a lot of glass at the front of the building to add light into the store, and then a elevator that would come up for people parking below the building that could get right onto the Main Street pedestrian promenade, which would be located here in between buildings 3 and 2. This gives a more up-close view of that Main Street connection, outdoor seating that would be located here for Whole Foods in front of the building, and then would also wrap around the corner of the building underneath a large wood trellis. So the materials, again, wood, aluminum, exterior plaster with warm, rich colors, and heavy timber, wood, brick, masonry columns, and then the retail shops that would be located behind the Whole Foods store. We would have a carpet of lights that would string across Main Street as we previously proposed. And the building materials, as I mentioned, would be these warm, rich colors, brick, stone, different types of stone, clear glass, the heavy wood timber trellis, wood siding, and the exterior color palette. And then along the Main Street side of the project would be the retail shops wrapping around to the west side as well. And then this is that outdoor dining area that supports Whole Foods prepared food area with some murals talking about the El Paseo history. With that site plan also comes a robust landscape plan, similar to what you previously have seen, the Main Street section of the project, which could be closed to autos and be pedestrian only. It could be open to autos. It's a combination of both so that we can encourage, again, heavy foot traffic. We have large sidewalks up adjacent to all buildings here. Raised planters and landscape features, outdoor dining areas for the retail restaurant shops. And then again, these enriched auto areas that would note down into the underground parking for the Whole Foods. And then that primary entrance located here and the secondary entrance located here. And then additional outdoor seating that would wrap this corner. So with that concludes our presentation. And I'll just turn it back over to Eric and to Alec.
That sums up our presentation, and we're all available for any questions that people might have.
Awesome. Thanks, everybody. So let's go to public comment now. I think actually, would you mind leaving your slides up, Kim? Would you be okay with that?
Sure. Would you like me to go back to slide 1 or?
Yeah, yeah, sure. Go back to slide 1. And if people have specific questions or comments, we can bounce around. So for everybody on the attendee side, use the raise hand function to raise your hand, and I'll unmute you one by one. You know, I'm not going to use the timer. I think we've got enough people here, but if you can, just please, you know, be aware of others. They may want to speak. So I'll have everybody go through once if they want to speak. If there's no others, we can go through twice. And I don't see anybody on the phone, so I don't think you need to hit *9. Oh, maybe there's one. If you're on the phone, hit *9 if you want to speak. And so let me run through it quick. So Amy Cody. Amy, how are you? Good to see you. You're unmuted.
Hi, Alec. Thank you. Thank you all. I'm calling from Moreland West neighborhood, which is adjacent to the El Paseo Shopping Center. Had a few questions and comments. I mean, the main one that I hear from the community that I also have is, what are the plans for buildings 1 and 2? Because, you know, we understand that with the reduction in height in building 3 and the need to build Whole Foods quickly, that the developer is still planning to build the entire 994 apartments, which was quite a number. How will the new design accommodate 206 additional apartments in buildings 1 and 2, which were already very tall and massive? Another requirement of the signature project was for excellent exemplary architecture. And so my neighbors and I are concerned that a drastic height reduction in building 3 might be approved without knowing what the impact is going to be on the rest of the site, because this was a planned, development that was considered all together. And so changing one piece of it, it's going to have some pretty drastic impacts on the other piece. We're also concerned about what the plans are, specific plans for providing parks and open space for 2,000 plus new residents. And this issue of Main Street keeps coming up. We see it's just really hard to understand what this is exactly. Is it pedestrian only sometimes, car circulation? The conceptual drawings show children playing, it shows strollers, people walking. But then there's a lot of parking spaces there. So I was wondering, like, how many parking spaces are in that Main Street? Are they counting toward the required parking for this project? Like, when would you anticipate that the street will be closed to cars and will be pedestrian only? Those are all my issues, but the big one is, what are the plans for the rest of the site? How can we approve this, this one building change without knowing what the plan is for the rest of the site?
Alec, I can start the answer to that question. Yeah, good evening, Amy. Nice to hear and see you again. And I'll answer about the rest of the development, and then Ken will explain the Main Street concept, which hasn't changed since the very beginning of the project. So the project the other buildings are not changing in that they will meet the height limits, the setback requirements that were established, and the architectural superiority that were established during the zoning. And we have no choice, because that's how zoning works. You have to follow those rules. It may require that the unit count go down in order to fit the required uses in those buildings. But to be clear, the height of buildings 1, 2, and 4 will not exceed what was approved by the city council. The setbacks required in the approval by the city council will be met, and the open space requirements, including the park and private open space areas, will all meet or exceed what was approved during the zoning phase. And in all likelihood, that means that the unit count could go down. We have approval for 994, up to 994 units. Under the signature project criteria, we only need to meet 582, I think it is. So there's a range there that that allows us the flexibility to make these adjustments and still meet all of the requirements in the city council approval. So Ken, if you want to review how the Main Street function works, that would be great.
Okay, will do. So currently, let me go to the landscape plan. So this particular plan and Main Street is very similar, as Eric said, to what was originally approved. In the original approval, we had a combination of parking that could be located at certain times of the day or weeks in the project. And then we also have the ability to close off Main Street here and make it pedestrian only. One of the requirements that Whole Foods had was to be able to have outdoor events on that Main Street. That remains continuous in place, exactly what we had presented previously. They anticipate doing some events out there, tastings, both food and wine, and possibly beer and other community driven events. And then the landscaping itself has not changed much at all from the previous council approved project. We have a node here, outdoor seating, same piece across the way, exactly how we had previously. Main Street comes around. This particular intersection and location of the garage entry is new. It used to be located here. It has now been moved here at the back of the building. There's less cars. Our traffic study has come back and looked at connecting here and here and getting that traffic off of what could be a much busier access point right here coming off of Saratoga. We think that's a great improvement. And again, connects building A from the existing center and some of the other buildings up in this direction to this entire Main Street concept here. This node was similar to the original approval, as was this. So I hope I answered all those questions there, Amy and Eric.
And do you know how many surface spots there are?
Oh,
that was one
thank
of
you.
Amy's questions.
Yeah, thank you. I forgot that. Let me get to the plan here. Okay, surface parking is a total of 58 stalls, but that includes all the parking along here and then what would be along Main Street as well. And those numbers are similar to what we previously had.
Yeah, thanks, Ken.
Yes.
Okay, let's go to Mark and Brenda Grimes. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing. You guys are unmuted. Go ahead.
Hi, this is Mark Grimsey. I'm live in Baker West, which is adjoining, adjacent to this project. I guess a couple of concerns. One is, why don't you think about swapping buildings 1 and 3? So the lower building, the lower height building is closer to the residence rather than having a relatively tall building right next to the one-story houses. The second item is that it seems like the parking, which used to be both in building 1, which was both commercial and residential, was available to the residents. Obviously, you've moved those residents out of that building, but it would have been parking that would have been available for residents from the other buildings as well. So now where do we expect the residents of those buildings 2 and 3, or I'm sorry, 1 and 2 to go? Because it seems like there's limited parking. Now you would have to go in front of the existing tenants here, J and 7, but will all the parking for these buildings stay within the confines of the project rather than bleeding over into the adjacent neighborhood? And the last item is that if you have, we have park space, we have commercial space that are required, and we have a residential space or resident quantity that it's minimum. When you have to balance all those, which one will take precedence? Will it be the commercial space that you have to hit 160,000 square feet, or is it the 500 residence spaces, or is it the park area? Which one will take precedence to make sure you hit as you vary the buildings to take in some of these residents that were in the Whole Foods building, but it's now gone? That's all. Thank you.
So Alec, this is Eric. I'm happy to respond to this question. So first of all, the prominent anchor tenant of the development needs to be out front, the most visible, out towards the major streets, adjacent to all of the parking throughout the center. So the major anchor tenant has to be in the block 3 location, building 3 location. It wouldn't work to put it in any other location. That's just the realities of how retail works, and Whole Foods wouldn't accept any other location. Secondly, with regard to how do you balance, the approved zoning by the city council mandates that those minimum requirements be met. So the project has no choice but to meet the minimum 160,000+ square feet of commercial, the minimum 582 residential units. It has no choice. And the park space is established. We established the park where the neighborhood wanted it, and the size of that park is not changing. It's going to remain as as anticipated and approved by the city council. With regard to the parking for residents, the parking for residents will be in interior garages within buildings 1 and 2. So buildings 1 and 2 will have all the required parking for the residential units within building 1 and 2. And also across the street, building 4 will have parking there for its residences. Keeping in mind that the city's new parking code adopted by the city council requires 0 parking. 0. We don't have to have any parking for commercial or residential, but we know that doesn't work in the real world. So we will be providing adequate parking for commercial customers, for residential residents and visitors, all within the 4 buildings that will ultimately make up this development. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric.
And then Alec, this is Steve Lynch. Briefly, I would only add, in addition to everything that Eric said in terms of Whole Foods requirements, if we were to flip Whole Foods to building 1 or 2, we need to remember that this is a full service commercial grocery store with a number of other restaurants next to it, meaning they're going to have some early morning and some late night commercial activities. Obviously, we need to follow City of San Jose's noise ordinance, but it is a much noisier commercial use rather than the residential. So right now, buildings 1 and 2 actually will function as a noise buffer pretty substantially for the fence line neighbors. So if we were to flip those, there probably would be an increased noise impact to those neighbors. So just another thought.
I have a quick question for Steve and Eric. Is there any plan to have like off hours resident parking in the underground garage, or is it solely going to be commercial parking?
Alec, that's something we can certainly take a look at. At this point, we feel pretty comfortable that there's more parking on this site than we possibly can need. And one thing I do want to keep in mind about the spillover parking into the neighborhood comment, which I believe is false. We have a massive field of parking. This site plan is only showing a partial, basically about 1/3 of what we have. So if there is any spillover parking, it's going to go into the rest of the commercial shopping center where there are hundreds of spaces. Because that is something we are cognizant of. If we don't get the parking right or we reduce it too much, where do those cars go? What happens to them? And we don't want them to go in the neighborhood. So the answer is they would go into the shopping center, but we have a lot of parking underneath both buildings. So
Understood. Thanks, Steve. Let's go to Bob Levy. Bob, you're unmuted.
Great. Thank you very much. I have some of the very similar questions as Amy did a moment ago. She articulated them very well. So rather than going through those again, I noticed that since you're bringing this down from 11 stories to 1 story, that means you're able to take that demand, those extra units, and put them elsewhere. Well, why couldn't we change this around a little bit and increase the height of this building to say 8 stories, 7 stories, 6, and reduce the height of the other buildings or increase the size of the parkland? I'm extremely confused as why, where we're surrounded by 12-story, 10-story, 11-story buildings, we're bringing this down to 1. When, if these trade-offs can be made, why don't we do it? Why don't we reduce or increase the height of this building and reduce the heights of the others, or increase the parkland? You know, theoretically, this is a signature project, which I personally don't think it's anywhere near a signature project, since signature projects are really designed to help balance the job housing imbalance, and this one exasperates it. And then also it's supposed to be, you know, the best urban planning possible, which isn't the case considering we have 1.5 acres of parkland that the city is not likely to adopt. And theoretically, based on Quimby, we should have, you know, 6 or 7 acres and the general plan. So I'm very confused as to why it did get passed as a signature project, even though it's not. But the real question is, why can't we increase the height of this building and reduce the heights of the others, or increase the park?
So, Alec, I can answer that. So first of all, the project as proposed now and proposed before and proposed in the future will meet all signature project requirements of the general plan. So the general plan says what's signature, not the personal opinions of individuals. This is a signature project as defined by the general plan. The reason we cannot pursue greater heights and mixed use on building 3 at this time is because we can't finance it. And we need to build a building so that Whole Foods can move in and anchor this development and bring high-end grocery to the neighborhood and bring in an anchor activity that really is the cornerstone for the whole development. So we're in difficult times in terms of the capital markets financing development. We also need to move quickly. We have a contractual obligation to deliver this building to Whole Foods in a timely fashion. We can't finance the project. We cannot approve it and build it in a timely fashion if we build an 8-story mixed-use building as proposed by the member of the public. That's the whole purpose of this revision. But in the end of the day, all of the uses, the mix of uses, the quality of the design, and the design concept will meet the signatures, the city's signature project requirements and criteria. Thank you.
Thanks, Eric. Melissa Abe, you are unmuted.
Hi, thank you. You pronounced my
Melissa.
name correctly.
Right on, gotcha.
So in the Baker West neighborhood, and thank you to Amy and the other people who have asked questions that are very similar and concerns that are similar to my own. This is not my question, but I just have to point it out about this idea that this project needs to be anchored by Whole Foods, that we did have a grocery store in this development that was, the rent was raised and it was kicked out at the very beginning before development began. And our neighborhood complained about that. And we were told at the time by the developers that we don't need a grocery store there, that there's plenty of other grocery stores around. So I'm just going to point that out. So because there's been comments about how things have stayed the same and nothing's changed. And now all of a sudden it's a grocery store that needs to anchor this when we had one there originally. But my question is I'm wondering what the plus minus is in terms of the number of trees being removed and added.
I can pull that up, Melissa. This was done through the original PD permit, so that wouldn't change. Give me just a minute and I'll tell you the numbers. This permit is only 60 pages long.
While you're looking that at, Alex, I'll just say that for building 3 and the Main Street, the only trees being removed are domestic parking lot trees. There are no heritage trees, probably no native trees even in this parking lot, and they will be replaced with high quality landscape design. And while you're also talking, okay, go ahead.
Go for it. I was gonna say I got it. So 20 ordinance size, 100 non-ordinance size. So non-ordinance size, anything less than 38 inches in circumference. So 120 trees total. They are planting 132 24-inch box trees, which is the equivalent of 264 trees on site.
Okay, so we're getting a plus in terms of
yeah. I mean they have to go plus. Okay. Basically, that's the city's requirements.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. That was my question.
No problem.
Thank you.
Let's go to Oberstar. I think that's John. Is that you, John?
Yeah, thanks, Alec.
Hey, John, how are you?
I'm good. It is John. I had a question, and this may be for Eric. My recollection, and sorry, I'm going to talk about building 2, but my recollection is building 2 is the one closest to the berm. And as I recall, it had a staggered step design and it had a setback from the berm. And I believe that for both of those, that the setback from the berm and the side angle from the property line back there were exceeded city requirements for both setback and sight lines. And in your answer, you said something about, when I think in response to Amy's question about things not changing. So I'm curious, are you suggesting that those side angles and the setbacks on building 2 would not change? Or were you saying that they could change, but still increase up to what the minimum city requirements are? Thanks.
So, yeah, thanks for the question. So the design, of course, is not the topic tonight, but the design of building 2 and the building 1 will conform entirely with the adopted standards that the city council adopted. Yes, we anticipate that the upper floors of building 2 will step back from the berm area. You can sort of see that in the diagram here. Those lines delineate a step back away of this conceptual layout that we're showing. But our original plan, far exceeded the city setback and step back requirements. And any update to the design of building 2 will still meet those requirements. Will the exact measurement be identical on every level? Possibly not, but all levels will meet the setback and step back requirements under the zoning and the city's citywide design guidelines.
I'd just make a plug too, Eric, for citywide standards, because those previously were not in effect when we reviewed this project originally. So now that this new amendment has come online, it will be subject to the citywide standards, which have actually more stringent step back requirements than what we had for the residential design guidelines, which was just a guideline at that point. So if it's any consolation, they will have more stringent step back requirements if they go closer. Yeah. Let's go to Kathy Oberstar. Kathy, you're unmuted.
Thank you. I know that we have now released the amount of parking spaces that have been required. But can you tell me how many car parking spots and bike spots are associated with the new building 3 design? And does the building 3 design assume the usage of the extra parking spots that are part of the existing project?
We'll have Ken or Alec provide the parking count for building 3.
Yeah, let me do that here.
Yeah.
Good. I'll just enlarge this a bit.
And while Ken's pulling up the chart there, I just wanted to note that the reality is that Whole Foods will not build a store that doesn't have adequate parking.
Oh, yeah.
Very, very few people, except maybe Bob Levy, go grocery shopping on a bicycle. So most people grocery shop with their vehicle. And so Whole Foods is insistent on there being adequate parking for their customers. Go ahead, Ken.
I walk,
Yeah.
Eric, by the way, just saying.
You walk? Okay. Well, you and Bob are the only 2 people in the city.
So our parking calculations here, you can see surface parking. I mentioned before the 56 stalls. That's at surface in and around the Whole Foods store. Basement parking is 239. We have 40 bicycle stalls that we are providing. 18 motorcycle stalls, and the way we get that is through the city's calculation of all 3 of those elements. So parking, we're basically parking required is 242. We're at 295. Bike parking required is 17. We're at 40. Motorcycle parking is at 12, and we're at 18.
Yeah, and I just
Yeah.
want to, I was giving Bob Levy a hard time, but do want to emphasize that the whole purpose of this development is also to attract pedestrians and bicyclists to this great outdoor environment. So we are providing bicycle parking that exceeds the city's requirements, because our hope is that people nearby won't drive and will choose to ride their bike or walk, not only to Whole Foods, but ultimately to all of the shops and restaurants in the Main Street area.
Am I still unmuted, or?
Yeah,
do I
yeah,
have-
you're still Kathy. If you'd like to respond,
Okay,
go
and
for it.
one other thing then is, as a member of the community, we still are struggling that this is a 30-acre lot. We know about 10 acres. And so we're assuming all of this, spots from other parts of the acreage. So Rosemary, I know you're on the line, but we would really like to see a holistic approach of the larger block. So that 30-acre project, I know the city council has approved that we can have someone go and put that development plan out. So as a community member, I really, really would like you, Rosemary, to be able to see that this can be the development. We are really struggling. We're really open to this project, but we're just really, really struggling with the large plot of land that we have no idea what's going to happen with that. So as a community member, and I would say everyone on this call, we're just really worried about the future developments. So yes, it's an economy that's bad right now, and I do not have any sympathy that you're having a hard time coming up with funds, right? So that's your issue, that's not ours, and we are happy to be able to help with that, right? But that is the crux of it. Thank you.
Can I comment on that? Because I think that, as a member of the community, I definitely myself understand that we need something more comprehensive. And what I can say right now is there are some things in the works that will be coming. So hopefully I'll be bringing you good news in terms of the overall, not just for this 30 acres, but things that are happening in that whole area. So stay tuned, and you'll hear more about that soon.
Thanks, Vice Mayor. Anybody who hasn't spoken yet, if you haven't, please raise your hand. Otherwise, I'll run back through the folks that have already spoken. Okay, here we go. Randy, go ahead. You're unmuted.
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions. One is solar going on top of the Whole Foods building?
Ken?
Steve?
This is Steve Lynch. We haven't actually got that far to looking at that level of detail yet. That's certainly something we consider. I know building code has a lot of requirements for solar, but I don't have that answer.
Okay. The other comment I have is directed at Rosemary. Rosemary, is this a Zoom call like your typical monthly Zoom calls, or is this something else?
This is from the planning department. So it's not hosted by me, it's hosted by city planning.
Okay, so that means that I guess in those Zoom calls, we can't see who else is in the meeting and there's no chat?
I believe that's correct.
Yeah, there's no chat.
And we can't see who else is in the meeting because why?
It's the format that we use. It's called a webinar. Because we have so many people on, it's really difficult.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You got it. Next up is Don. Don, you should be unmuted.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. So There was some confusion or not explicit about number of tenants earlier in this meeting, but I think it's on slide 1 of the slide set that's up now. In the upper right-hand corner, it shows the count of residents in each building, and now it shows a count of building 3 as 0, where I think previously, of course, it was a higher number. So previously, if I remember, the proposal was 900, what was it, 26? What, 900 and something?
994, yeah.
994. But in the upper right hand of the first slide here, it shows 800 and, okay, yeah, updated project data. If you could zoom in there. So we're showing 833 units. So that's a net reduction in what, 160 some units. So I just wanted to clarify that because you were talking about reducing down to a possible of 583, as it's mentioned in the second bullet point. Can I clarify and get confirmation that this new plan shows 833 units, and how solid is that number?
Yeah, so the only topic for discussion tonight is building 3, which has 58,000 plus square feet of commercial and 0 residential units. What happens in buildings 1, 2, and 4 is to be determined in the future, and will come back through a public process, public review by city departments, as well as a community meeting like this, for their design and content of those buildings. We have provided this chart as a conceptual, what we call a conceptual capacity study, to reasonably demonstrate that we can reach the required minimum commercial space and the required minimum residential space within these 4 blocks, if we take building 3 down to 0 units. That was the purpose of this chart. I would say that this chart shows the more likely scenario. How about that? It's not determined, it's not designed, but it is the more likely scenario as compared to the 994 units.
But again, Eric, just safe to say that this is conceptual at this point. That's the key.
It's all
the key
conceptual
point to
except
make.
building 3.
Yep.
It's all
Understood.
conceptual except building 3.
Understood. Thank you. I'm just going to go to the last few folks that haven't spoken yet. So, PJ, if you can, please unmute yourself.
Hi, this is Peng from Moreland West. I'm sorry that I joined late. I don't know that if I missed that. My question is that is there a timeline when does the building 3 is going to be finished and the Whole Foods going to be open? Is the Whole Foods going to be open while the building 2 and 1 still enter the construction? What's the timeline for building 2 and 1? That's my question.
Yeah. So we don't have a timeline for buildings 1, 2, and 4 at this time. However, Steve Lynch can tell us the approximate timeline for delivering a new Whole Foods on this site, because that is the urgent timeline we are working towards.
So I would only add, obviously, we are still looking at a building 1, 2 redesign. It's just not complete right now, and it won't be complete for a little while. So I just want to put that out there, that yeah, we're looking at the entire project. That's it. In terms of Whole Foods, it's going to take at least, it's going to take a year to get building permits, and it's about a 2-year construction project. So if you're looking at, approval of this project in October, November, it's about 3 years from that point, probably a little bit less. It could be as early as summertime. But we have a little, it's a ways to go. And remember, it's not just Whole Foods, it's the other 5 tenants that are attached to that as well. And probably a pretty good chunk of the Main Street area will be constructed concurrently.
Got it. Thank you. Sorry, let's go. One last person who hasn't spoken yet. Mike, please unmute yourself. Mike, can you hear us? Mike, are you there? I'm not getting anything from him. Let's try this again. Mike, try now. Nothing. Am I not hearing? Eric, do you hear him?
I don't hear anybody.
Okay, not hearing you, Mike. Let's try this again. Mike, I made you a panelist, so let's try that. Can you hear me now?
If if he can't get on, I know, Alec, you're going to put your contact info at the end of the presentation. He can submit his questions and comments by email, and if those questions require our response, you can let me know, and our team is happy to respond to him.
Yeah, let's do that. I can't seem to get him to work. Sorry, and one more thing for PJ, by the way. So this meeting is recorded. So for anybody who joined late, I'm going to post this on the website. And then I can also share it with you via email if you'd like. So in the next week or so, I'll have it ready on the website. Let me share my screen quick because we are at time and I want to be conscious of everybody's time. So hold on just a minute. Where am I here? Screen 3. Put my contact info here for everybody. So if you have any questions about the development application, so really just any questions about the project at all, you can reach out to me. There's my email and my phone number as well. Give me a call if you have any questions. And I can forward anything on to Eric and Steve and Ken if I can't answer. And then we also have the contact for Nguyen. So she's the environmental project manager. So she'll be reviewing the environmental CEQA addendum. And if you have any questions on that end, you can email both of us, email New, and we will hopefully be able to answer you in a timely fashion. But I just wanted to thank everybody for coming. Vice Mayor, you have any parting words?
I guess I too want to thank everybody for coming. And, in addition to reaching out to you, Alec, I'm here if anyone has anything additional or would like to share anything with me in my office. So please make sure to let me know. I know many of you on this call and you know how to get me.
Awesome. Yeah, really appreciate it. Thanks everybody. And I'm going to stay on for a little while. I'll keep these slides up. So we'll adjourn for the night, but please feel free to take down my contact info. And I hope to see all of you soon. Take care. Have a good night, everyone. And thanks, Eric and team as well. Thanks for the Sand Hill folks.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alex, and everybody for attending.
Thank you.